everyone, and welcome to the Night and Ones podcast, episode number 34. As a reminder, we are the only podcast that features a former UCF National Champion, a former UCF radio host, an infamous, not infamous, but infamous rapper, and an IG star shooting the breeze talking UCF sports. And this week, we have another treat as part of our series introducing the new Big 12 brethren to our podcast world and the College Huddle podcast network. We had Arizona last week, and this week we have their hated rivals, the Arizona State University Sun Devils. So we'll see how much I'll say, since we're a clean show, talking we have during this particular show, but we're excited to have Mark Harris with us this week. As for UCF, baseball was a little bit of a womp, but softball was pulling on strong, so we're excited to talk about them a little bit since Alan will not be on the podcast, unfortunately, so we can talk about other UCF sports and not just football and basketball. But without further ado, let's get the show started. And Nobre, you done with your drink now?
Hey now.
Hey now. Hold on. I thought we were doing the deep voice.
Hey now.
Yeah. Oh, that's better. All right. You're making me feel better. We got you on the hey now. We just now got to get the right octave. If we can do that, you'll be perfect. But super excited to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us and doing everything that you do.
Of course.
All right. Let's get a hair flip. There it is. All right. Next, we'll bring Ben Stout on the stage. We never get a hair flip from Ben Stout because he always has a hat on. Ben Stout, welcome to the show.
If I don't have a hat on, I'm usually like, a little bit more like a product in the hair. So I'm not much of a hair flipper, but
you mean like this?
What's up, guys? Good to be back after a little week off. Thanks for the PTO, Roger.
You're welcome, and thank you for coming back. You missed a little bit of hilarity. I don't know. It almost felt like the teacher had left or something like that. I don't know what's going on. So last but not least, but always last, Josh Lazar.
I'm going back to Tempe. I'm going back to Tempe. I don't think so. What was this PTO? We're not getting paid. It's not paid time off.
You're right. It's UTO.
Hey, listen, you guys get paid by being able to like hang out with me for 2 hours.
Man, what a treat!
Well,
I mean,
actually, Roger,
I bring value to your life. I mean, come on.
Your billable rate's probably about the same as mine, so it's about the same compensation.
It's an even trade. There we go. All right. All right, now that we've got all that out of the way, unfortunately, Alan Levin doesn't look like he's going to be making it this week. Trey Neal is running late because he's doing the wonderful thing that he does for a living and helping people, through surgery. So hopefully we'll be able to get him a little bit later. If not, you're stuck with us. But what we do have this week is Mark Harris. So let me go ahead and bring him onto the stage. Hey, Mark, welcome to the show. He's from the Stomp the Bus podcast, and he's also one of our new Huddle friends and a new Big 12 brethren. So welcome to the show, Mark.
Thanks for having me on. So we're actually not part of the Cuddle podcast. I thought it was the Cuddle podcast network.
Oh, we cuddle and then we huddle. Come on now.
Or is it huddle and then cuddle, right?
Yeah.
Do we huddle and cuddle or do we cuddle and huddle? I don't know.
That's what we signed up for anyway.
So Mark signed up for the cuddling, not the huddling. All right. Okay. Thanks for establishing that for us, Mark. You are our representative for the ASU Sun Devils. So newly minted Big 12 brethren, and we're bringing on all of our new transplants from the Pac-12 to introduce you to Night Nation. So we're excited to talk to you, learn a little bit about ASU, everything from the tailgating experience to whether we should be, bringing our bats to the tailgates or to the games and to protect ourselves, or what that experience looks like. And of course, I heard ASU is a little bit of a party school. So what's that like? All the important things. But why don't you give us, let's start off with this. Why don't you give us a little bit of background, because it's really interesting to me. we called it a public divorce last week, which is pretty much what it was, right? Nober dipped out on us. I guess he got tired of hearing us. But we'd like to hear what the fan experience was like for ASU as all of this unveiled. I mean, it was 9 or 10 months of will they, won't they? Then it was the drama of the night before the Apple deal. And then there was the drama between the Board of Regents or governors. I can't remember which one you guys have. I think Regents, Board of Regents, and ASU and Arizona was going to go after Colorado. And then there was a back and forth there. So what was that like from the fans' perspective? And then kind of take us through that. And then also, how do most fans feel about being part of the Big 12 now?
Okay, well, I'll answer the second question first. I think most ASU fans there are going to be some older fans who don't follow the machinations of this quite as closely. That, I just wish we could be in the Pac-12. College sports is going in a wrong direction. All the same stuff you hear from, most college sports fans. But, I would say most of the fan base I think the word is relieved, because the way our athletic leadership handled the whole situation of potentially moving conferences, they just didn't handle it well at all. I think there was a report that Michael Crow and Ray Anderson had basically zero contact with Brett Yormark until the very end, when Washington and Oregon left. And to me, I think they really thought that they were just going to sign up, everyone was just going to sign up with the Apple deal, and the Pac-10 would survive for 10 more years or something, and then maybe something else would happen. They weren't, clearly they were just wrong on that. And I think just by ASU's being in Phoenix, having an enormous, school population, alumni, and then I would say a decent overall football history, although we're in the last 2 years have been a down stretch. But I think ASU football historically has the 25th best all-time win percentage. So I can get into that later. But I think all those factors were and because Brett Yormark wanted us the whole time, it's all we're relieved to get in despite our administration's best efforts, for lack of a way to put it. Can you say
did you guys believe the Apple deal was going to go through as a fan base?
As a fan base, I can't speak for the whole fan base, but I think a lot of people, I think they thought it was a possibility, I guess, but I think what a lot of the fan base was upset about is why did it appear that you guys had no plan B? That, at least from the outside, I don't know everything. I don't have a bunch of inside sources, but just from the outside, it seemed like people I think even though the Utah fans on social media were way more against going to the Big 12 than ASU fans were, it seemed like their administration still, especially towards the end of the whole saga, it seemed like their administration and, athletic leadership were way more just handle it better behind the scenes. And I think there's no better example of that. When ASU, Crow and Ray Anderson, when they had their initial press conference about moving to the Big 12, it was on a Saturday morning, at 9 a.m., and neither of them even wore any ASU gear, which I thought was just, I didn't care about it as much as other people, but I just thought it was just you guys couldn't even, you don't have a polo somewhere that you can put on,
Ray Anderson the whole time was saying we aren't going anywhere, even right up to the end.
Right. And I believe I think him and Michael Crow were on the same exact page on that, and things just fell out from underneath them, and they just misread the situation, which that's a very on brand for Michael Crow when it comes to sports, specifically sports. Michael Crow's describing the Apple deal as what did he call it? A Star Wars, Star Trek technology or something. And it was dude, what? This is not, 2012, man. Like it's 2023 when this is happening. And just Ray Anderson just kind of making the unprofessional statement about, oh, I'll send my assistant AD to Morgantown or whatever. It's like, dude, just say nothing. Like, just don't say anything. And I think the fact that they had it, like their press conference, like it was outside of the football practice facility, not even like indoors somewhere. I think it just shows how like they didn't want a segment of the Phoenix media to show, like the ones that weren't like kind of just the normal TV people that don't always show up to practice all the time, who would maybe have some more pointed questions about why this went down and how they handled it. I think they just kind of wanted to get the press conference out of the way and be like, thank God we got into the Big 12. But no one will ever convince me that Michael Crow wanted ASU to be in the Big 12. There's just no, I mean, there were some fans who were like, oh my gosh, is he just going to turn down the Big 12 and like, we'll just go off to the Mountain West or something? I think that just the money ultimately, like, even if you don't want to go, I think that
that would have been a breach of his fiduciary duty to the school.
Exactly. Yeah.
Something like that. Right. I mean, there's no way that you could do that.
Right.
It just feels like, I feel like the way that Crow handled this from the outside looking in was like, he felt like this was a failure of some kind. But I also think that wasn't he on the committee that was trying to negotiate all these deals and all that stuff? So it was almost like a direct reflection of him as well. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's not the biggest thing with Crow is
Crowing on Crow. That's our headline for this segment.
Oh my gosh.
Eating crow.
That's a good one. Eating crow. He supported Larry Scott. He was like the biggest, he was like the most powerful president in the 2010s when Larry Scott was running the show at the Pac-12. And he just empowered him, all of his dumb, decisions and just misguided stuff like that. Was Michael Crow was really supporting him, and he had the juice in the Pac-12 room, because this is the thing with Crow is like, he's done a really good job at like 95% of his job. Like if he just had someone else like handling all the sports stuff, then he would have a much different reputation among the average ASU sports fan. But that's not, he doesn't. So like there's a lot of like meaningful academic things that have been accomplished under Crow. That like, I always try to mention that when I'm talking about him, because like it is like I've had some friends who kind of defend him. Like, well, it's not his main job. Like he's done a great job at the university, and like, they're not 100% wrong, but it's also like, why do you have this giant blind spot? Like why can you not, like, there's like the Arizona State, Ray Anderson resigned in mid-November, and it's mid-April. No athletic director has been hired. And there's been a lot of reporting that it's almost certainly going to be an internal hire, which is just, the fan base just absolutely hates that, because it's like, why not just make the internal hire right after in November, instead of waiting 5 months when you could have
Well, it kind of looks like you guys got turned down by some people if you do that. I mean, just from a
I wouldn't be surprised. There was a lot of people wish we could have gotten David Benedict, the athletic director at UConn, who I had no idea who he was before all this, but like his parents went to ASU. I think he got a graduate degree from ASU. I'm not sure. He's from Tempe. Like would almost certainly take the job. And I don't know. My theory is that I just don't think Crow wants, like, I think he just wants someone who like won't push back at him quite as much as someone who's.
It feels, I mean, would you say that like athletics is a priority for him? I know for us, and especially a lot of schools in the South, right? Athletics are a huge priority because it literally drives admissions, right? If you are good at school, it doesn't matter if you're talking here, FSU, UF, Georgia, any of the major schools. if you suck at sports, people are going to go elsewhere. Is that the same kind of thing for Arizona? I know you guys get a lot of Cali people, and Cali people aren't known for really caring about college sports. You know, is that the same dynamic, or is it just not a priority for them?
That's an interesting. It's not a priority in the larger sports as much as it should be. But he does love how, like, we do have a lot of, I don't know how many sports that ASU offers, but it's much more like closer to like Cal and Stanford. They have like a ton of different sports. And
by the way, Cal and Stanford should not be your measuring stick in the Big 12. There's a reason they got to the ACC. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And that's one of the things that fans are frustrated at him at, you know, and our basketball arena hasn't been like renovated in like 50 years. And it's like, but at the same time, ASU also recently added a men's hockey program that's really growing fast and is growing steam and is actually entering, I think it's one of the better college hockey conferences. And our men's swimming team just won a national championship, and we always have good golf and stuff like that. So like he does care. It's just his sports interests are just misaligned with what the fan base wants. And every fan base wants to be really good at football and men's basketball, and now even more so women's basketball too. And with ASU specifically baseball as well. And, you know, we were chatting before, and you guys mentioned how like your guys' athletics like aren't complacent because you've always had to be trying to get to the next level, where like ASU has been very complacent because it's like, we've been in the Pac-12 for 45 years. And even though the school's so big that it can kind of like, it doesn't need sports quite as much as the selling point as other schools, because there are only 3 public universities in the entire state of Arizona. It's because it's ASU, U of A, and then Northern Arizona University up in Flagstaff. And that one doesn't really have much of a sports presence unless you live cross country. They're like, because they're at like 7,000 feet, so they can just churn out Olympians up there. But you have a ton of people coming in from California. And I don't know necessarily like that they're bad sports fans or anything, but it wouldn't be the same as the South. And you have a lot of people who, you know, come in from like the Illinois area. I'm from Western Washington. There's a lot of people from Washington that come to ASU. So like, it does have the appeal of it. Like, it's still one of the largest schools, and like, there's no like one major sport that you can like grab onto and be like, oh, ASU is awesome at this, you know?
Basketball is pretty consistently good.
It's basket. I don't know. This past season was really bad. But Hurley has at least, he's a pretty controversial subject with ASU fans, because the basketball program, like from a administrative standpoint, doesn't really get supported that well. But
sounds familiar.
Yeah. He's also like taken us, like we got to the tournament last year. I'm forgetting the numbers that he went to 2 tournaments early on, and then he would have gone to another in 2020. So it's like he's kind of established that like more of a higher floor at ASU in recent years. But with the portal, like it's hard to be like, I don't know, that's kind of thrown things out of whack now that guys can leave so easily. And that just happened with us, with our best player from last year, Frankie Collins, going to TCU. I don't know how much, like, it's so weird because like we just picked up a guy from Ball State who averaged 18 and 8 rebounds. And it's like, okay, like maybe this guy comes in and he's really good and it totally translates to the Big 12. It's like, it's just kind of
that was Jalen Sellers' teammate. He was one of our players from last year, was a transfer from Ball State. He was our leading scorer last year. And he was in that guy's ear to come down and play in Orlando as well. So it's interesting that you mentioned that. And then we also had a player, CJ Walker, who went to TCU in the offseason as well. So
what's weird is like it almost doesn't even like, I was surprised to see how many guys from Colorado left immediately after their, you know, decent season this past year. So it's just like, it's kind of it's so unpredictable, you know.
Basketball is its own animal now. It's not like when Ben played.
Oh no, it's unfortunately the new normal with basketball is that because you can go somewhere else and make an immediate impact, and because you can bring somebody in and they make an immediate, like, it's just on both sides. The transfer portal is so much more, I think, under a magnifying glass on the basketball side, even more so than football or other sports, because one player can make such a big difference when you only got 5 on each end of the court. You know what I mean? Right. And yeah, so that's an interesting thing about. I mean, you kind of like, we've talked about this so much on the podcast about how you just have to kind of completely recalibrate your fandom as a basketball fan and college sports in general, as like, you only can cheer for the jerseys, man. You only can cheer for what's on the front of the jersey, because just if you're enjoying one season, don't enjoy it too much, because you never know how quickly it can go downhill or how quickly it can go back up. So
right. Well, and the other thing is, particularly with basketball, like, most of these guys know in the back of their head that they probably don't have like some long NBA career in the future. Right. I mean, just by the nature of just how many, there's like 15 guys on an NBA roster, and there's more and more international guys coming in. And like, if you're Frankie Collins, who's like a 6'1" point guard, like, what's like, I get why you want to cash in as much as you can while you can, you know? So like, I don't even really blame the players too much. Like, it's just how it is. And so,
and even you mentioned Colorado. I mean, they're like one of the players that's going to the NBA draft is going to be the #1 overall pick, or potentially could be.
There,
yeah. I mean, so I mean, that's they're losing a player like that. Those other players are probably like, oh, let me go figure something else out. You know.
Yeah.
All right. So, you kind of mentioned something there about, getting a bag, right? So let's talk about NIL for ASU. Where does ASU stack up in the NIL game, relatively speaking, and where do you think they would fall in the Big 12?
Yeah, so I don't know relative to like, first of all, I don't have any like inside information on this, so I just want to be like transparent about that and not talk out of my hind parts, I guess. So this is a family show
for everyone.
So, yeah, exactly. But just from like kind of just like contextual stuff, and it seems like right now we're like mid-tier among the Big 12, which is it's better than where we were before, because we talked about Ray Anderson in this would have been February of 2022, and at this time, this is within the year of ASU football, when all the Herm Edwards stuff came out and how they were doing all the illegal recruiting stuff. And someone from the staff like sent all this stuff to the NCAA and be like, here, we hate Antonio Pierce, how he acts as a coach, and I'm going to turn all this stuff in. Just ASU's like just now coming out of that, recovering from that with the football. But anyway, Ray Anderson, this is in February 2022, after the 2021 season. Jaden Daniels has already entered the portal and left at this point. It's not a good time at all for the fan base. And he goes on Arizona Sports 98.7, which is like the flagship ESPN radio station in the state. And when he's asked about NIL, he's like, oh, we're not going to do NIL here. We're just focusing on developing players and stuff. And that just, it's ridiculous that he said that. Like, even if ASU didn't have a big NIL, war chest or whatever, like you have to answer that differently. You can't just be like, oh, we're not doing it. You just have to give some word salad answer. Honestly, that's better than, and a lot of that had to have come down from Michael Crow as well. I just won't believe otherwise.
So do you think Ray Anderson, I mean, everything you've said so far, he sounds like he was pretty inept as an AD. So do you think he was just a bad AD, or do you think he was in a bad situation?
I think it was a little bit of both. I think Ray Anderson, he did do a lot of decent things, like getting the hockey arena built. I do give him credit for that. And like a lot of his day-to-day stuff, it was fine, but it's him. Hiring Herm Edwards was a fatal mistake, and it didn't, no one, when the hire was made, everyone was extremely skeptical of it. And then it looked okay for a little bit. Like the program still stayed like decent, but then it failed in a different way than people expected, but it failed all the same. And so when you make a skeptical hire like that, people are like, okay, well, why did you do this? And you add in the fact that Ray Anderson was Herm's agent when Herm was a head coach in the NFL. So it's like a huge conflict of interest, and you're making a hire that no one else in the coaching hire search of 2017 was like, oh, I have an idea. Let's hire Herm Edwards off the ESPN booth. That's what college football needs right now is, a guy in his late 60s who was like a mediocre NFL coach. That's what we need to do. And so people didn't really think about Ray Anderson that much when like the first few years, like they were kind of building, and it didn't look terrible. And then, all the investigation stuff comes out. It's like, well, why did you hire? I'd rather us just hire.
Well, yeah, the recruiting. I mean, ASU's recruiting in football was going up.
It was, yeah.
And that was obviously a reason for that.
Right.
He was just a little too early.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't even all just, it was just a lot of stuff.
Well, I mean, they had them on campus, if I recall correctly, that was having them on campus when they weren't supposed to, and that kind of stuff. And
they literally were sneaking guys in through the back of the facility and had them turn off the security guard lights and stuff. It was ridiculous. So yeah, but I would say with Ray Anderson, he was also having to work under Michael Crow. So I don't know how he would have done it a different athletic department, but he probably also would have never been hired to be an AD at another department because he didn't have any AD experience.
Yeah.
He was coming from the NFL as being one of their key lawyers or legal analysts, or I don't know exactly what it was, but that's why Ray Anderson's not an idiot. He's a very extremely accomplished guy. It's just that he the Herm Edwards hire was just a mistake. And if Herm had ground out a 10-win season there, then people would think of his tenure differently. But if you look ASU football, every single coach, I mean, he didn't even finish ranked one season. You should be able to do that one year, finish 20th in the AP poll or something. It's not it's not we're Indiana football or something.
Wow, throwing the Big Ten under the bus tonight. All right.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to go with the school that was absolutely 100% one of the lowest football schools.
Wow. You could have went with Purdue or Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt. Yeah, that's true.
There's lots of choices. I'm just
Arizona,
So we used to have the saying the Pig Five, you know what I mean? Just because it was bloated. And a lot of these teams below were getting paid, basically the high tier SEC and Big Ten teams were getting paid. All right. So we kind of get an idea around your NIL. Tell us a little bit more about the fan experience, right? So what's it like? What are some highlights on game day? Are there any traditions that we should be aware of? I know you guys don't throw tortillas on the field, but anything like that that fans should be aware of?
Yeah. So we do have some kind of the devil walk thing. I think a lot of schools have something like this where the team comes off the bus and goes in the stadium and people, cheer them on.
Yeah, we have the night walk or, whatever. Yeah. So
we have that. I wouldn't say that this is something that there's not a great tailgate scene. And a lot of it is kind of how the area around this stadium is kind of set up. Apparently, so I started at ASU in 2014 and I don't have any previous, I kind of just, it's before I was born, essentially. I wasn't paying, I lived in a different state. I didn't, but there was a time where there was a much larger grass field for people to tailgate on and stuff like that. And now there's one smallish grass field and a parking lot. And, tailgating in a, for September games in a parking lot in Tempe, like that's a long day.
We know all about the heat,
Yeah.
and at least yours is dry, ours is humid. So when
Yeah.
you come to Orlando, it's kind of a toss up. I mean,
Pick your poison. Yeah.
Yeah, for us, we have like a mister and stuff at our tailgates,
Right,
to cool off.
But what I will say though is like the bar scene on Mill, like it kind of makes up for it. Like you can kind of get started there and then go to the game. And I'd say like it's a very like if you're taking all the Power 4 teams and like filtering out their fan base like passion level in terms of football, I'd say ASU is like very in the middle. And the last few years, I don't know.
The Arizona guy said you guys were pretty heated and threw stuff and did things like that. Or is that just rivalry talk?
I think that's more rivalry talk. I mean,
okay, gotcha.
I don't know. I feel like all these fan bases are mostly the same. Like if we're being honest, like it just takes a few drunk dudes throwing stuff to change it. But I guess ASU's fan base is probably a lot like the UCF fan base in that sense. But I guess what I meant in terms of passion is like ASU is never going to be like Nebraska where they have like the sellout streak or whatever for a million years. And, like it's just like when ASU, they host Wyoming, their first game of the year. Like it's almost certainly, it's not going to be a sellout, like it may not be, it's not going to be like Stanford or whatever, but like it's not like one of those where it's like everyone's at the game, even if it's some lame opponent and the team isn't expected to be that good. But like it can be as good as like most stadiums on like a night game. ASU's a decent team. They're playing a decent team. Like then it can really get going. The last few years have not.
You realize you guys are going to have to play 11 o'clock games in the Big 12, right? Because
I'm fine with that. A lot of people hate night games. I love night games. Okay,
we love night games.
Yeah, I think they're great. I think the ASU fan base responds to it better, in my opinion. Even though there have been complaints about it, I think you get the best student crowd. And some of it, like there are legitimate complaints of, I want to take my kids, and if it's an 8 o'clock game, then whatever, they're going to be home at midnight and all this. And those are real complaints, but I don't have kids, so I don't know.
Okay, so you were talking about comparing fan bases, right? So for us, we want the night game so that we have the full amount of time to tailgate, right? And so we're tailgating depending on which zone that you're parked in, right? Some people stay overnight from the night before. We have RV places or whatever, but others, they usually open for the higher level donors. It's like 8 o'clock. For the rest, it's like 11 o'clock, right? But you tailgate. We have a pretty active tailgate scene, like really active tailgate scene. So you go from like 9 to like 7, right? And so by like 6 o'clock, you're stumbling over to the stadium. And we have alcohol sales in the stadium all over now. So, and then you get up for the game and everybody, doesn't matter if you have kids or not, everybody's into it. So let me ask you this. How many, like if we had a hypothetical UCF game, how many fans on average would be at the stadium for you guys, would you say?
Well, I'd say this year it'll be higher the last few years, like, with the end of the Herm era, this past year, Ray Anderson like announced the self-imposed bowl ban 4 days before the season began. So like you've had some just self-inflicted things that like are gonna be like, I'm not going to a game this year, or whatever. So like, it would because you guys play at Tempe this year. I think in late October. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but
I'm working on that.
I would say if like ASU is like a 4 if ASU and UCF are both kind of like 4-3 teams, I would say there will probably be so early
November 9th. Yeah, right after Arizona comes here for the space game, and that'll be fun. And we got to buy afterwards.
Okay, there you go.
Yes, you guys get us off after a bye week. And I can tell you if
no, buys after Arizona State. They have us after a space game. That's going to be fun.
So let me put it to you this way: if we're like 4-7 by that point, this fan base is going to be in full meltdown mode.
Mhm.
Well, you couldn't be because it's the October 9th.
No, I know, but I'm just saying as an example, if by the time we get to your game, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games in,
Sorry,
right?
11-9, not 10-9.
Yeah, 11-9.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, if we get 9 games in, and we've got 4 wins. Gus Malzahn might be going home on a bus. So let's just put it that like we're not going to fire Gus, right? But at the same time, if we only have 4 wins by that point in the season, this fan base would be livid, tearing up goalposts for the wrong reasons. So let's just put it that way.
Right. I guess like I would say this year, I would imagine like if ASU's doing really bad, then there would be a lower turnout. But if they're doing the way
what's the lower turnout? Is it like 40,000? Is it like 30,000?
Lower turnout would be like 30,000 because the stadium holds like 50,000, I think like 52,000. So if they're getting like, and I guess I would say like if it's a good, I would say like 46,000 plus whoever comes from UCF would be like a pretty good turnout. But it could easily sell out too. Like it's just tough to judge because the last few years there's just been so much pessimism in the fan base. But I also think that like this football season, like it's tracking to be like they're good enough to go to a bowl game, I would say. And who knows how it'll all play out. But so I would imagine like a pretty like I would imagine like a 8 out of 10 type, I guess, if that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, I think we've covered it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Go ahead, Ben. Sorry.
Yeah, one of the questions that I have, it's one of the ties that our two schools have kind of had since I went to UCF is like always seeming to be 1 and 2 or top 3 in undergrad student enrollment, right? I think Arizona State is number 1 right now in the country, and UCF is number 2. And in the case of UCF, I mean, we're just overall a young sports program, right? I mean, and that's the reason why it's not only it kind of feeds into our energy and kind of attitude as a fan base, but what also kind of feeds into that is because we have had such a large undergrad student body and we are relatively young as a school, like our average alumni is like of our fan base, like our
35.
our average age of our fan base is relatively young. And so does that track on the Arizona State side? You guys have been around longer, obviously. You've been in, you played football for many more decades than we have, for instance. But you also have a reputation of being a pretty big party school, and the large student enrollment. Does that just kind of track to kind of a younger fan base overall?
Yeah, I would say not to the same level as UCF though. Like I don't know what our average alumni age would be because you have a longer history, but like ASU didn't always have the same student body, 45 years ago that it does right now. So that kind of changes how it all works out. But I would say it's probably on the younger side in terms of alumni, just because like so much of the alumni that's young, like probably was recently at the school, right? Just because of how big it's gotten.
Yeah.
But there's definitely an older element of fans too, because especially like if you were, a fan in the 70s, like that's when ASU football was like really like, I think they finished the year, like 1 year, like number 2 in the AP poll or something. Like they were really, doing well and winning Fiesta Bowls and, putting like Hall of Fame level players in the NFL and stuff like that. So like that, like one of the things is like, it's if you never have like these breakthrough like seasons, to like have like your guys' recent runs to like BCS bowl games and stuff. Like
Right.
I think there might be a little bit more of like a more energized fan base if that had been the case. But overall, I'd say it's on the younger side. But it's kind of weird to judge just because there's so many people that have gone there and like just it's been around for a while too. So yeah.
And is the bar scene like just feeding into the party, like, you know, atmosphere? Is the bar scene like really, or like the main bars like really close to the stadium, really close to campus, like that? So that's like all walking distance. So that kind of feeds into everything, huh? Because that's something that we don't really have at UCF.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, definitely.
We have bars nearby, but nobody's like leaving a bar and walking to the stadium. It's a kind of
Burger U. I mean,
Burger U now. You're right. I guess I'm just thinking of like bars that like students and even alumni are like always.
Bar Louie, you could stumble across there.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to.
That is a dangerous
That
intersection.
makes it more of a little bit different college town experience than what we have at UCF, I guess.
Yeah. No, if you guys come to Tempe, like it's Mill Avenue, that's the main area. Like it's really close. Like you can walk there or, you know, take one of the scooters. I've had a few interesting rides on those over the years, but like it's right there. And it's very like you can walk there so easily. Like you can see the stadium from the bars and stuff like that. Like it's a huge deal. And also like Old Town Scottsdale is pretty close as well. It's not within walking distance, but it's within like a short Uber ride away. And so like that kind of adds to the whole, the Old Town doesn't really add to like the ASU football experience, but like it adds to like the vibe of ASU. Like I don't think you're a true ASU student if you don't somehow know someone who was a club promoter at Old Town. So yeah. So you know, that's part of the vibe. I'm sure there's a pretty big vibe like that at UCF too. Like, you know, you have two Southern. ASU isn't a Southern school in terms of like its region, but like it feels much more West Coast, even though it's not on the coast. But Southern, just in terms of like, you know, latitude, schools, and then huge populations, and you know that ASU doesn't have the most restrictive, you know, process to get into the school, right? So like that adds an element of it. You know, it's not like everyone's saying like Stanford or Vanderbilt or Northwestern have the best party scenes, right? Like, you know, you need some, you know, 2.5 students to get that rolling
through the door.
Yeah. And I would say that the Arizona and Tucson has a very similar vibe to that as well. So,
basically, Ben, what he's saying is go to Mill Avenue, imbibe a little bit, have your avocado toast, and stumble over to the stadium. That's what he's saying.
Hey, man. Sounds good to me.
Hey, whatever fills you up, you know, just gotta eat.
There's not much that fills Ben up. With him being 7 foot tall, he eats a lot and he has to drink a lot to even feel a little tipsy. So, but all right, cool. Let me ask you this: what haven't we asked, or what should UCF fans know about ASU?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say that I think everyone like at ASU, like it's just I think people just try to have a good time, good vibes. Like there's gonna be like with you guys said about some UCF fans, there are, you know, like every fan base has some a-holes, but like, you know, I think that people are mostly pretty welcoming. I think in recent times, there's a lot of self deprecation, if I can say that right. Like
deprecation. Yeah.
So I don't think like you're not coming in and people are like have an arrogant vibe and all that. So like, I think UCF fans should expect a good time when you come here. And there is a lot of cool things to do, like in the area too. Like the campus is gorgeous. There's all sorts of little mountains nearby that you can check out. And
mountains. We don't have mountains in Florida.
There you
Mount
go.
Dora. What do you think Mount Dora is? Come on.
Yeah, all 100 feet above sea level that it is. I mean, come on.
Yeah. And then when it comes to football, like I would say that this season, it just everything I've seen coming out of camp, spring ball, and just recent, transfer portal additions and / retentions, honestly. It feels like this team is, I don't want to say like poised for like a breakout season, but like poised to just kind of be a competitive team, which they kind of weren't for the last 2 years. And so I think we'll come into the Big 12 and like, I think like there's a lot of like preseason, like this preseason stories and stuff that have ASU as like the worst team for football. And like, I get why they have them there, but I don't think by the end of the year, that's where they will be. I think this is much more of like a 6-6, maybe 7-5 type team. But
is there optimism with Kenny Dillingham and like just optimism around the fan base? Like, okay, once he gets his guys in there, like I feel like we're really gonna start rolling. Is that?
Yeah, there's definitely optimism with the Dillingham regime. For example, like I think this is a really key thing to bring up is we recently lost our wide receivers coach, Rashad Samples, to Oregon. And like, that's just how it's going to be if you're in the Big 12. Like if one of these, larger schools like Oregon, it's like, are you really going to blame the guy for going to Oregon? And it's like, I don't know. But anyway, like you have someone depart your staff, which is never great. He just hired Hines Ward to replace him.
That's
and I was a little bit skeptical at first because like, why are we doing the ex-NFL thing? Like, but then I looked into his background and he was a wide receivers coach at FAU and had been the head coach of the XFL San Antonio team. So it's like, oh, okay, he has like legitimate coaching experience. And I think the thing, how it relates to Dillingham is like, at least like it's good that Dillingham has the juice to pull that off, he's like a 34-year-old head coach who, in terms of on the record last year, like they weren't good. So like, I think that's a really good sign for how this is going. Our defensive coordinator last year did a really good job. And so like, that's again, like Dillingham, when he hired him, he was like, yeah, I hired him because when he was at Washington State, he gave me a lot of problems when he was at Oregon. I'm like, that's like the perfect mindset of hiring the opposite side of the ball coordinator. So you have that. And I think just he's been able to, I mean, honestly, I think we have a pretty good group of skill players. And so like, I think that's good. And that, having those type of guys succeed can only, hopefully it attracts more and more guys like that, So I think there's optimism with it, like from the fan base about like, oh, the football program seems like it's going in the right direction. Knock on wood, transfer portal, that could change all of this. But I as I say that, like they do have the depth at those positions to like be able to absorb a few defections.
I think the big thing you'll find in the Big 12 when you guys get here officially, right, is that the O-lines and D-lines are no joke. So you're going to need strength. Like we always have skill players because, we're from Florida, right?
Yeah.
But the lines and the linebacker core, we kind of came into this, and even Gus Malzahn said, Big 12 is known for being a high flying offenses, spread offenses, and when we got here, everybody that we played was playing, smash mouth football.
Right.
So it wasn't,
that's what it was like 10 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even a few years ago, we were talking to the OSU guy, and the OSU guy even said, it really changed a couple of years ago, but we found out real quick, depth along the lines is one of the key things to being successful here, and having really, really good linebackers and stopping the run. So we're doing a much better job. We feel we're in a much better position as far as depth is concerned with our line and our defense this year. But that was one of the lessons learned.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that was one of the particularly on the offensive line last year. Like it was a not.
Was it offensive?
Offensive, yeah. There you go. Yeah. Well, it didn't help. Like,
see, you haven't reached peak dad joke level yet.
No.
So what you need to level up.
He hasn't reached dad level. So come on.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to be a dad to spout off some dad jokes, but definitely it helps.
No, like last year, our offensive line, it wasn't like the strongest position group anyway. And then within the second game of our season, both of our tackles, like one was out for the year and the other missed like half of the season. So it's like that's just torched everything. And then we had quarterback injuries that followed that, and it like everything kind of snowballed from there. But like but like just in terms of additions in the transfer portal, not in terms of like I don't know how good each addition is, but like just in terms of quantity, they've brought some guys in, and just from what I've seen, like it definitely seems like their offensive line is in a much better overall shape to succeed. And then defensively, defensive line is, I'm not really worried about that quite as much because our defensive coordinator, Brian Ward, runs like a very aggressive defense. And so last year we had a guy from Texas transfer down, Prince Dorba, and he had like 6.5 sacks. Clayton Smith transferred down from Oklahoma. He had a good year. And like, I think that's one thing that ASU's really been doing in the new transfer portal era is like, oh, you didn't start at Oregon? Okay, well, come down to ASU. Like, I'm sure UCF is doing a lot of this too. Like, you can still be like, oh, okay, like it didn't work out at LSU. LaTerrence Welsh, who's come to ASU. It's like, oh, and like, maybe if you can't play at LSU, like, who knows? You could have like a, top 5 pick blocking your playing time at some of these places where it's like, but that doesn't mean you can't play.
So for us, it's like a dual strategy, right? Because we've been upping our recruiting game anyway. We've been kind of held back by the Power 5 label for a while. And so we keep increasing. So we were number 1 in the Big 12 last year. We're tracking that way again this year. We've already got a bunch of 4 stars for 2025. So we have that, and we continue those 5 stars and, high 4 stars that, we miss out on that might go to UF or FSU or, a lot of those guys, they'll come back. If they don't start the first year, they'll come back and we'll continue recruiting them and we'll get them as a transfer. Lee Hunter was an example of that. One of our big linemen from Auburn. We had a guy from Alabama, KJ Jefferson. Gus Malzahn recruited him, while he was at Auburn. And they ended up, going with whoever they went with that also came in at the same time. So, yeah, I think that's a continued thing. I think we're a little bit more blessed because we are within the state of Florida. So for us, we recruit really heavily in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, a little bit of Louisiana. But that's our primary foothold. And our big thing, because, Phoenix is huge. Orlando is bigger than most people think. It's 2.7 million in the metro. So we've kind of made a concerted effort to recruit what we're calling the state of Orlando, right? So we've done a really, really good job of making sure we're keeping all those high-level 4 stars coming to UCF. And so from a recruiting aspect, it's a little bit of that. But now that we've kind of caught up with the P5 level, and Gus Malzahn is still a big name in college football, and specifically he recruited Florida and Georgia for a really long time in Auburn. So there's a lot of connections he kind of brought to the table, and we've reconnected a lot of high school relationships since he's been here. So from a recruiting aspect, I don't think it's so much about getting those guys that don't make it, but it's maintaining the relationships that we already had, and those that are like super high level 4 or 5 star recruits, like Javon Baker, who went to Alabama and sat a year. He came down to Orlando the following year. Or Goldie Lawrence, it was between us and FSU. He chose FSU. He was there a year and then came back to Orlando. So, we're in a lot. It's funny because now, the types of teams we used to be in dogfights with was like Georgia Tech and whatever. Now on every top 3 list, it's us, Alabama, Georgia, or every top 5 list, it's us, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and LSU. So from a recruiting perspective, we've kind of already surpassed that. But we've still got a little ways to go. I think we were 35 was our recruiting class last year, or was it higher than that? I can't remember. Only because we don't take as many players as a lot of other schools. Our recruiting class was something like 17 or 20 last year, but average star ranking, like we're in the top like 30, top 25 around there in recruiting. Yeah. So it's a little bit different.
Need to change that on like 24/7 and all those. Like, I feel like the average star rating is so much more important than the quantity,
Yeah, because you'll have like Texas Tech loaded up on 3 stars last year, and our average rating was way higher than theirs, but because they loaded up on 3 stars, it was us and Texas Tech at the top of the recruiting.
Yeah, well, and that was like I think ASU was kind of finished in the mid tier of the Big 12 recruiting, and their average star rating was like a little bit higher than that, but I think it would have been like top 5 if it was average star rating. And so like it does change. But I mean, I think with recruiting rankings, I feel like once you're just kind of in the middle, like I don't really know how much like being like 40th versus 50th really means anything, so
well, for us it means everything, because we're in the state of Florida, so we're expected to recruit that way, and we've kind of displaced Miami in a lot of ways in the Big 3 and in Orlando, so that's yet another measuring.
You guys have a better coach, that's for sure.
Yeah, Miami hasn't done anything but buy players and do nothing with them since they joined the ACC.
No, I feel like that's more of Miami's reputation now than it ever was. Like, that's the last decade and a half for Miami versus any type of clout that the U has at the moment.
Yeah.
Once Nevin Shapiro wasn't able to have cocaine-infused boat parties in the harbor anymore, that kind of went away, allegedly. So I want to add the allegedly, as I don't want to besmirch the good Nevin Shapiro's name, Mr. Miami himself. So we're going to leave it at that. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find the Stomp the Bus pod on YouTube at Stomp the Bus. We don't have a huge following, but we provide good insight, and just a lot of it's just kind of just expressing our emotions about what's going on at the moment. So
you heard it here first. ASU fans are emotional.
That's right. Hey, I'll take it. It could be worse, I guess. But
do you guys have a Twitter or Instagram or anything like that?
No Instagram, just Twitter. It just at Stomp the Bus Pod on Twitter. It's in the College Huddle network. I believe there's so many new, pods in that, so it's kind of hard to keep up. But I think we follow each other, and and the name Stomp the Bus. At first, you wouldn't think it has anything to do with ASU, but before every game, on the screen they show a video of a giant Sparky. He's walking through the Phoenix area. And
so there's some trivia for you. We didn't know what the Sun Devil's name was, so it's Sparky.
Sparky. Here's a basketball.
There we go.
Don't go further. This will be 3 in a row. They start ruining my facts. So
Josh's fun facts of the week.
Sparky. I would unbiasedly say the best mascot in the Big 12, but that's just me.
You'd be wrong.
Unbiasedly?
We have two that are better. We have the Citronaut and the Knight. Come on now.
Maybe the Citronaut. I'll give you guys that.
Space U, baby. We have rocket launches on our field. The 50 is lined up with the launch pad at Cape Canaveral because we're Grant University. So, like the other night, we had the spring game, and as soon as the spring game was over, they lit up the tower, and then you watch the rocket launch right over the 50-yard line.
So anyway, Sparky walks through the Phoenix area, and then before he walks into the stadium to throw down the ASU Trident, he stomps on the opposing team's bus and crushes it. And so there you go. Stomp the bus.
Oh, on the video board.
Like,
So
Gotcha.
no, not in reality. Unfortunately, the bus.
Well, I don't know. You
That would
know,
make him a pretty
could
cool
get a little
mascot if he
crazy.
actually did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, get a little crazy. Had a little too many nooners, and jumps up on the bus and starts
Right.
stomping up and down. You never know. It's college football, and I wouldn't put it past SEC mascots. So I'm putting it out there.
Yeah. Well, I have one question for you guys before we head out. Like,
Sure.
Actually two. Like, one, who do you think is going to win the Big 12? Because I've been thinking about this, and like there's no like one obvious answer. And then like for me, like it's weird. Like being in the Big 12, it just represents opportunity because there's no like, just for speaking from a Pac-12, there's no Oregon standing in your way with just so much money and just recruiting classes that go crazy, and or USC in the same vein, and honestly Washington as well. Like there's not any like maybe the biggest like it's like Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Utah fighting for that number one program right now, and like none of those are like impossible to take down. So both of these, yeah.
I'll say this about that. I for me, and guys, I'll let you guys answer too. But for me, I think K-State's going to be tough again. They bring their quarterback back. They had a really good run last year. I do think that Utah, they bring their quarterback back, who was also hurt. So we didn't know if he was going to go to the NFL or come back. He came back, so they're going to be tough. Utah's been consistently good. So I think they're going to be a contender. OSU is going to be interesting. They bring their quarterback or their running back, and he's phenomenal. But if they're one-dimensional like they were last year, they didn't have much of a passing game. So you'll run a lot. You'll win a lot of games with the run. But if you can speed them up or get out to a fast start, it's put a couple touchdowns up on them so that they can't just grind the clock. They're going to be interesting. I think Iowa State's going to be better than everybody's expecting. Kansas, they bring back Bean, I think. So for their quarterback,
Daniels. I don't think
they have Daniels, or did Bean go to the NFL? One of them went to the NFL. I can't remember.
Yeah. I don't know if he'll go to the NFL.
Well, I mean,
he went to the draft, the combine, and the draft, right?
Okay.
So, but Bean was actually a really good quarterback in his own right and did really well. And then when Daniels went out last year, he came in and played really well for Kansas too. He might be an undrafted free agent, but he might surprise. I mean, he had a pretty good skill set and was a 4-star quarterback in his own right and played well for Kansas the previous year. So I don't know where he'll end up. He might be a 3rd or 4th rounder. But at the end of the day, I think all of those teams are going to be contention. I will say that we are going to be in contention. Our defense is much improved over last year. Last year, we had a brand new defensive coordinator. We brought in Ted Roof this year. It's going to be way more aggressive and way more. Our defense was vanilla because we had a brand new defensive coordinator. So with KJ Jefferson, we've got a really good running attack. We've got we really do have a 3-headed monster in the rushing attack. We've got RJ Harvey, who was one of the best running backs last year. We've got Johnny Richardson, who's a change of pace back, who's really, really good with the speed. And if he gets into space, he's a track star. And then he was hurt last year. And we've also got Miles Montgomery from Cincinnati, who was their top running back. So he's a ground and pound, big, massive guy. So we can run the ball. The defense has been upgraded. More importantly, the linebackers have been upgraded. So we've got some depth there. And I'd say we're going to be in the mix for it all the way till the end of the season. And last year, people forget we had the record that we had, but every game we lost by 3 points and no more than a touchdown. So we just we just had a lot of injuries. JRP was injured last year all season. We had a backup quarterback for part of the time. We had Johnny Richardson was injured. We had a lot of injuries last year, and we've got a lot more depth this year to be able to make a run. Go ahead, Ben.
I'll say that you kind of proved Mark's point when you named about 4 or 5 teams that could be that it is pretty wide open. I would agree with you about. I mean, obviously UCF is. I mean, I think that we've got a great chance this season, and so I think that we're going to be in the mix. And beyond that, I'll agree with some of the top teams that you said there. I think Utah is going to be real tough coming into this conference, and yeah, I think they're going to be a contender right away. And then Kansas State, kind of keeping it rolling from last year. I think those are probably our one of our, a couple of our biggest roadblocks. But this league, I will agree with you, Mark. I do feel like it's relatively wide open, in the sense that I feel like there's not necessarily like, I think there's definitely not like just a clear top 2 or something that everybody's looking at like, dang, and I don't want to even say that Oklahoma and Texas necessarily were that experience for us when, our first year in the Big 12. But traditionally, just because of the money, and as you described, that Oregon and Washington and everything are.
Well, I mean, Texas hadn't done anything since Colt McCoy, and
yeah,
Oklahoma
I'm just saying, going up, having a school like that's always going to be like, a powerhouse from a money standpoint and resources standpoint. They're always going to be able to dedicate more, financially than we can to our program. I think that in that sense.
Not always, but right now we're on half shares for this athletic season and next athletic season.
Always, as in the past, I was saying, but regardless, there is no clear cut like the entire conference is looking at this one team or these 2 teams that are saying, oh, there is that. But I do feel like there's maybe a more clear bottom half, top half right now, and luckily, at least from our perspective, we feel like we have the right amount of weapons to certainly be in the top half and then contending for a conference championship in year 2 of the Big 12. In the same and in the sense that Roger just mentioned, I mean, we're still financially a few decades behind what we're going to be, which is exciting for us, and we're excited to for the new Big 12 to move forward with the teams that we gained this season, Arizona State included.
Yeah.
All right, Josh. Last but not least, but always last.
I think UCF's going to win it all. No, I will say this. I think UCF has a pretty darn good shot if KJ is cooking and does well as the quarterback he can be.
If he stays healthy.
Yeah, that's across the board, and that's kind of to maybe Mark's point that a lot of it we just don't know now. I mean, forget the transfer portal, which is just starting when spring ball is over, and NIL collectives around the country are trying to pull off 1 or 2 of your people or more. Who knows who's going to be healthy, right? So my gut instinct, twofold. One, Mark, I agree. There isn't this 2 or 3 people, like it's always Alabama or it's always Clemson or it's always this or that. Oregon's, of course, a great one from the Pac, now Pac-2. But this is the beauty of the Big 12, which I hope will respond in maybe good telecasts and viewer coverage. It's pretty open. It really is. So my gut is, my first thought was Utah right off the top of my head. My next thought was Kansas, right? Could be state, could be regular. Sometimes they just do some interesting things, probably more Kansas State. And honestly, I think we're going to have the same thing we kind of saw in the standings last year. We have this grouping of like 2 or 3 teams that are like, you're really good. And then a bunch of like, okay, you can probably beat most people any day. And there's the bottom of the barrel of the Big 12, which is probably better than most of the top of most other conferences. And that'll be probably maybe Cincinnati again. I don't know. We were about there.
Houston
last year. Houston.
I feel like Baylor could really I feel like they don't have any momentum, But yeah,
Well,
Yeah, I think
that's
I
a sore
agree.
subject at UCF right now. For last
Well,
season.
no, I think I agree, but I think TCU is a name that I didn't mention that could be
True.
better. They were expected to be a lot better last year than what they ended up being, but they were hit with the injury bug early as well. So I don't know what kind of team we're going to get out of TCU this year. I think they're going to be a contender as well. Well, like you said, there's a lot of names to put in there, but there's a lot of teams. There's probably a good 4 or 5 teams that have buzz coming into the season that, if they play to their potential, can be really, really, really good. I mean, really, we should have been probably an 8-win team last year, easily, but we weren't. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see I mean, like even Oklahoma last year, who played with our quarterback, by the way, Dylan Gabriel.
Right.
Even Oklahoma last year came down to a one touchdown
real
game
close.
at the very end.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I forget. That's right. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I feel like you guys are definitely in the mix for sure, especially learning more about the team just now. But I like, obviously Utah and K-State, I feel like those two like deserve to be the top 2 in terms of odds and stuff like that. And just years of like they might have the 2 best coaches in the conference. I feel like Oklahoma State, like I would fade them this year. Like you guys, like when you guys played, you guys just destroyed them, right?
Yeah.
And when ASU played them, I was at that game, and like Oklahoma State won, and like they eventually pulled away to like, I think it was a 10-point game by the end of it. But I wasn't really that impressed by them, especially when they got like destroyed by South Alabama too. So they were just a weird team, and I wouldn't expect them to reach the conference title game again. But Roger, you mentioned who I'm going with is Iowa State, just because I feel like it would be very on brand for the Big 12 to have a team that wins that isn't like one of the teams that like everyone's talking about entering the season, right? Like if you guys are Iowa State one, or if Colorado wins,
Iowa State going into last season was predicted to be really good, but remember, Iowa State last year had that betting scandal that took out their quarterback and a bunch of their players, so they had to sit some games. Right. So they were pretty strong towards the end of the season. So Iowa State's another. That's why I mentioned them in my preview, for lack of a better term. So, like I said, I truly think there's 4 or 5 teams, and all of the games, typically there's not a lot of blowouts. They're all 7-point games. Maybe you'll get a 14-point game, but a lot of them are won by 7 points or 3 points. So you have to play all 4 quarters if you're going to win in the Big 12. It's a really good league. It's an underrated league, even with Texas and Oklahoma winning. I mean, Oklahoma was the class for football for a long time. Texas, Texas has just been down. They've been down for a really long time. We are losing 2 big brands, but we're not losing that much competitiveness, if that makes any sense.
I agree. Yeah, totally.
So, all right. What was the second question?
Oh, I think you guys answered both of them, because it was like, who do you guys think would win? And then just the topic of there not being like the apex predator in the league, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, UCF's working towards that. We're just
there. You go. Yeah.
That's what we do. We enter a conference and we end up being the apex predator.
You guys are like isn't Florida struggling with like the pythons that got released, or like there's all these
South Florida? That's Miami.
Florida has the Everglades down there.
Yeah.
Central Florida. I mean, people don't realize how big of a state Florida is. Like when I drive from Orlando to Santa Rosa Beach, it's 412 miles, and I'm not even making it anywhere. I've got another 100 and some odd miles to go to the border with the next state. So it's a huge state. It's in a really long state.
Right.
So we keep all of our pythons down with the Gators in the Lake Okeechobee and let Miami deal with them. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. For our college cuddle preview, we'll definitely talk more, and we'll definitely do a preview before the game when we play this year. But thanks for sharing the information, and look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Yeah, great to be on, and go Knights when they aren't playing ASU. So
charge on.
That's right. Charge on.
All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that college cuddle, which we've established it now. So Mark apparently likes to cuddle. He mentioned that on the podcast. And we learned that they're emotional, that ASU fans are emotional. So, that dovetails nicely. But thank you, Mark Harris from Stomp the Bus podcast, for joining us this week. And it's time to transition to something exciting. We had a little thing called the spring game. I know Alan got the date wrong a few times, but we actually did have it. Josh, did you end up making the spring game?
Yeah, I got there at some point, but yeah.
I know we were talking about the parking situation.
We can avoid that conversation. I was not in a good mood. But yeah, I actually got to the spring game. I was there for most of it. Got on the field with my daughter. That was cool. She's 5 years old, and so I got a picture of her on the 50 with the 5 and all that, and talked to
ruining her in a good way is what you're saying.
Yeah, we were. I'm trying to build her. I want her to understand what I like, and if she's interested in it, great. If she's not, that's fine too. She just if she wants to go to some school that isn't UCF, that's okay too. She'll just hopefully have a fan. She'll be not a t-shirt fan, right? At least growing up and going. So she enjoyed it. I got like an epic photo of Nitro and her, which will probably maybe even make it on a wall. It was good, but no one cares about that here. You want to know more about the game.
I agree. No one cares, Josh. No, just kidding. Listen, it's all about making memories with the kids. Ben can attest to this. I take both of my kids to games and all kinds of stuff, and trust me, they're fans, and it's those memories that you have together. So, Ben, did you make it out to the game?
I did not. No, I followed along with the spring game action, mainly from our text conversation and a little bit on Twitter. But you guys were doing a good job of keeping me updated.
Yeah, it was a half of football, and it wasn't a full half of football because I think it was like 12-minute quarters for each quarter. But we got 2 quarters. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit vanilla. Just simply because 1, we don't want to show anything. 2, the transfer portal opens up afterwards. You don't want to throw the whole playbook at it in case someone goes to, a conference rival. And 3, this is all about fun. So I did watch Gus's presser today. I think it was posted, and he kept mentioning the horse. Being sideways when Eric DeSalvo was running. And,
hold on. I could talk about that. Okay. And I think
first before you do that,
sure.
Make sure to tell us whether the horse pooped on the field when they were running or not. All right, go ahead.
That part I couldn't see because what I was more focused on was the donor who took a lead and then left when Gus said go. So the way it was, there was like 4 people supposedly in a line. I'm trying to do this for visually for those of you who are watching on YouTube, but there are 4 people in the line, 2 donors. I think it was Eric DeSalvo. Maybe it was 3. 2 donors, Eric DeSalvo, and the horse. And the horse was kind of in the back, and the horse was sideways. He was 100% right, as Gus is. But what I don't think Gus saw, or because they are a donor, they got away with the gentleman all the way at the far end, which was the last part after the game-ish part and some other cool competitions. That first gentleman all the way towards the home side, the Roth Tower side, had a good 4 or 5 step start, realized a mistake, froze, and then when he said go, went. So Eric DeSalvo, I know you have the video. I don't know if you're going to show it, but I think he probably
did. He beat Eric? Did he beat Eric? Because
the horse he did. He had like a 5-step head start, and the horse was sideways and had to turn, and the horse was in the wind.
The horse was being fed carrots, but I'm sure DeSalvo did that. He had a hand in that.
Oh yeah, and so that was also something like DeSalvo had something he was throwing, and I'm pretty certain it was oranges. I think that's already been out there. One came to us. We were near the lower cabana, and one came to us like maybe within 10 feet, and it made a thud. I'm like, is he throwing oranges? So honestly, I actually think Eric would have beaten all of them if the donor didn't take a couple of steps before he said go. But Gus isn't going to call out a donor. He's a good
also, what some of the other festivities is you had the coach for a day experience for those donors. So make sure if you've got the coin, it's a great experience. They even did a little part of the presser where they were asking him questions and things like that. So UCF's definitely embracing the fan base. I think they heard that loud and clear after last year just with the limited appearances and interviews and things that were done in the off season. I think UCF heard that loud and clear, and this was their attempt to do it. So, all right, let's talk about like the results. UCF did post a score sheet for the game. Timmy did play this game, did not throw very well, but ran very well, although it doesn't really matter because from what I hear, Timmy McClain has entered the portal. So that opens up a lot of questions around the backup quarterback slot. For KJ, he had 271 yards, 2 TDs, 2 interceptions in his quote-unquote debut. He was not able to be hit, and where he makes his magic happen is when he's got arm tacklers draped all over him and he sheds them and makes a move. So I think there's something to be said for that. He definitely didn't show his cards when he played in the spring game. Offensively, Miles Montgomery had 34 yards. Johnny Richardson, 31 yards and a TD. Townsend was played in 3 different spots. He led the receivers with 100 yards. Gerard Baker, who's now injury-free and making a little noise, had 88 yards and a TD. It was a 72-yard catch and run. Chauncey Magwood, so he was making people miss. Chauncey Magwood had 70 yards, and Pittman had a touchdown catch for 10 yards. Kylan Fox lined up at receiver. Remember, he was a big tight end recruit for us, and he's a big guy. He's like 6'3" or 4, I think, and 240 pounds. But he was lined up on the outside. Townsend was lined up in all 3 positions. He was outside, he was slot, and Gus said that. And a lot of these guys were getting a little bit more burn. Whittemore was getting a little burn too because Kobe Hudson did not appear and did not practice for a lot of the spring with a slight injury, but he kind of gave him the RJ Harvey treatment. What is interesting is that he did sign with an agent. News broke today that NIL collective agent. So that's a little concerning for Kobe Hudson. I don't think that he's going anywhere, but that's a little disconcerting. Defense, threats, pace, and Ziri Alexander had led the way with tackles with 5, 4, and 4 respectively. As far as the linebacker spot is concerned, it looks like we're in a good place with the linebackers, and we've got two of the Cincinnati defenders playing for us, so it's pretty interesting. The third defender at safety, is going to definitely be in the rotation as well. So there's some familiar faces from last year's Cincinnati defense that will be playing for us next year and seem to be doing really, really well. Nicholas Antoine, he had a pick, but that was off of a pass that was thrown to Fox. It was kind of bobbled and caught. And Christian Peterson had a pick. John Walker had a forced fumble. And 9 different players had a sack in the game. And again, I do that in air quotes if you're listening on the podcast. So, we'll get to our impressions overall, what we felt, but was there anything that jumped out to you, Josh, while you were there that just kind of said, hey, this guy's going to be a good player and blah, blah, blah?
Well, almost to your last point, one of the bigger things was that there was a couple of times where I thought KJ would have fought through and not gotten sacked, honestly. And I know that he's not, two-hand touch and he's sacked. But I don't think the defense got that much of a benefit for him being untouchable, if you will. There are a lot of times where Timmy and others were getting sacked too. I'm hoping that's a good sign for the future. I think I've seen terms like confident with the defense, and I really love, out of all the things I like hearing, and I wish Trey is here to talk about it. Maybe we'll be next time, but confident in any part of a team sport is a term I love hearing. So
aggressive.
Yeah. I'll tell you, if I'm picking out one person, and you talked about Kobe not being a full getting full reps or almost any reps, albeit when I was at practice, he certainly was. So it must happen after they were out of shells. X was like lightning, man. He is definitely someone where I feel I've always liked this play. And it's interesting because they said they're kind of moving him around in different areas, especially since he has more reps. So I know we're all like, oh, is Kobe going to go? Or maybe he's just testing the market to see what his value is and making sure he's getting the proper value at home. Whatever that might be, would I love to have someone who will probably be on an NFL roster in the next two or so years at home? Absolutely. Or at least rather at UCF. But I really think if there are other pieces of the puzzle that can do pretty good things, pretty nice things. So Kylan Fox going out as kind of this wide receiver tight end hybrid, that there are some cool things to look at his way during the game. So it was again, it's vanilla, as Trey has said in the past, but some things like the defense is really what I think we're all hoping is really confident. That's what we're really hoping for, because I think the offense can get there where it needs to be. So from my view,
it'll be interesting offensively. Two things that I kind of think about is offensive line, right? If we're seeing that many sacks, what does that mean for the offensive line? Actually, three things now that our presumptive backup quarterback has left. The second thing would be who's on the outside, right? Is it going to be X and Kobe Hudson, right? We have Burdell Richardson as well, who you saw him live and everybody has gushed about, right? So does he get more burn than what we're expecting? And then, the last time we had a short, fast receiver, that ended up transferring. I think he went to, as Alan affectionately says, Ole Miz, and we call Old Mids, right? I can't remember his name, but he did pretty,
right?
Yeah, Jalen Robinson. He did pretty well for himself. So X, if he can get into space, that's the biggest thing that makes him dangerous, because he's really, really fast, and I think he can create some space with his speed on the vertical routes. And I'm expecting a lot out of Pittman. The other question that I have now, and it's funny because we've always had questions about defense, is who's the backup? Dylan Rizek did not do much during the spring game. He's the presumptive backup. But does EJ Colson, if he comes along, does he, because he reclassified this year, right? And so he is 2024. He's young, but if he comes along throughout the season and something happens to KJ, do we throw EJ in there because he will be the starting quarterback presumptively next year,
right?
For us, just to get him some time. So knock on wood, nothing happens to KJ, right? But
yeah, of course.
Is he the guy that goes out there in garbage time during a game? You know what I mean? Or do we continue with Dylan Rizek? So it'll be interesting. Also, that Kobe Hudson move that I mentioned earlier, that kind of makes me raise an eyebrow. The transfer window, we're recording this on April 15th. The transfer window opened. So who bolts like lightning, from the team and the transfer window, and then who should UCF go after in the portal? I know we've got our eyes on a receiver that we're trying to get, who I believe he's from Auburn as well, former 4-star receiver from Auburn, who we're trying to go after. And do we try to get some more defensive line depth? Because the one thing I am worried about is Walker getting a bag. And I think we're going to be worried about that. And Lee Hunter getting a bag. I know Georgia needs some defensive line help. That's something we need to keep an eye on as we kind of move through the transfer window. But I will say that I do think that the Kingdom has prioritized both of those guys for us. So I'm hoping we're in good shape. Other news, we landed a new commit from who's the 8th of this year's class, 3-star tight end Kanan Peening out of Cincinnati, Ohio, 6'4", 230 pounds. He was actually his offer list. He's one of those guys that doesn't have a lot of doesn't have as much camp time, but has good size and has a pretty good offer list. I believe he has Orlando ties as well and moved to Ohio. So this is a bit of a homecoming for him. UCF also landed the seventh commit of 2025 was 3-star defensive tackle Ryshawn Perry. If that name sounds familiar, brother of former UCF defensive back Kobe Perry. So we were talking about brothers last time, right? 6'3", 275, and ranked in the top 25 in the state of Ohio. So it's interesting that we have so many Ohio, commits or whatever, because typically we don't go after that area. But it's nice to, always get legacy type commits as well, because I think that bodes well for us long term as we get more and more of these 4-star guys and siblings and cousins and whatever start coming to UCF if they have a good experience. So that's super exciting. And, just to add on for Caden, he is the first tight end commitment of the class for 2025. But, think about this, 8th of the class in 2025. And we all know that, our higher end commits last year started committing around July. So those guys, it's going to be a lot more, there's going to be a little more patience if Knight fans out there are thinking, well, what about the high end, big 4-star guys that we've gotten used to? There's more competition for those guys. They're going to take more visits. They're going to be, that's going to be a lot closer. I think we've forgotten the last 2 years how many signing day commitments we were kind of waiting on. Will they, won't they, kind of thing. And I think the clock really doesn't start until July, end of July, and at least this transfer window is closed. What are your guys' thoughts? Any concerns about the O-line? Any thoughts on the quarterback situation? What are your guys' thoughts there?
I think it's interesting. It's just tough to watch the spring game. Obviously, we've already talked about, kind of the basic playbook and everything. But when it comes to our the roster and the players and how they perform, it's just so tough to talk about the spring game, mainly because it's like offensive line gives up sacks, and we're using air quotes, of course, for that. And then, but is that because the offensive line needs help, or is it because our defensive line and our defense, played a little bit better? And it's like either way, UCF kind of, you could either say, that's a bad thing, or it's like a glass half full, glass half empty situation, just depending on the way you look at it. So spring games are tough. We had a text talk. I said, KJ threw 2 interceptions. We should cut him. We should cut him. He threw 2 interceptions in the spring game.
The old JRP.
You brought up a good point right as I said that, because it's true, because we went through this on previous shows on Nightline, like the JRP like haters, like if that was JRP, it would just be like, I mean, that's all people would be talking about on social media during the spring game is, oh, he threw 2 interceptions. What a garbage quarterback he is. I wish we still had Mikey Keene. But yeah, obviously it's kind of nice to like not really care about that, because you're just like, all right, great. We have some questions about the secondary. I'm glad they could catch the ball if it's thrown in their direction. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, so spring game's fun. I think UCF like does a great job of evolving every season when it comes to the spring game. I thought a little, some of the things on the highlights and stuff on Twitter that I enjoyed the most was RJ Harvey throwing the ball a mile, and that competition.
Oh my God, 69 yards.
Yeah,
Remember, he was a former quarterback, but that dude is built.
Yeah, he's such a strong guy, and it's just, yeah, you're right. Former quarterback in high school and at Virginia, but that was really cool to see, just the highlights of that, all the other little games and stuff, and then picture wise that you guys were sharing on the text talk. I mean, I heard the story about it beforehand, but just the helmets that are designed by
Arnold
St.
Palmer
Jude,
Hospital.
yeah, Arnold Palmer Hospital,
Yeah.
children, and so that just that little aspect of the game, I think, was a really nice touch. And UCF puts a lot into the spring game that isn't just involving the football team and what they're preparing for and what they want to see in the spring. It's kind of a celebration, since we're all just kind of chomping at the bit for fall to start. It's a little bit of a celebration that we get in the month of April. So
you mentioned JRP. JRP was on the sidelines at the spring game and was on the field. He had people wanting to take pictures with him and all that stuff, still supporting UCF in spite of it all. He's got all this going on with the draft coming up, and he's got visits with a bunch of different NFL franchises as a quarterback, by the way. He's got, I think, 4 or 5 different visits scheduled that have been publicized already. And in the midst of all of that, he still takes the time to come to UCF for the spring game and support the school. And, it just says a lot about him, and fans love him for it. I think JRP is going to be kind of like that Mackenzie, not quite Mackenzie Milton, but kind of like Mackenzie Milton. That guy, when he came to UCF, I mean, Ole Miss fans were upset. They were sad. They went to Twitter and wished him well and did all that. I think JRP is going to be that guy, no matter what you feel like as far as his quarterback play is concerned. The man played baseball for us. He played football. He did it at a high level, and he supports UCF. So make sure you support him, because if there's anybody who deserves it, JRP deserves it as well.
Agreed. I think he's going to go down as one of those like fan favorites, like looking back on it, that like you kind of forget. You'll probably forget much before, you remember how such of a great guy he is. I think you forget about all that nonsense between which quarterback you wanted in that position in that year.
Thank goodness we don't have the Mikey Keene debate this year to talk about. That was so frustrating to have to talk about. Wish him the best where he's at now. He's at Fresno State, I think. And he played pretty well last year, and I hope he keeps playing well. But thank goodness we don't have that kind of controversy to talk about this season.
Hopefully he doesn't abandon his team in a championship game. That'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wish him well.
All right, Josh. On that note,
I gotta follow that.
Oh, you're gonna follow it. You're gonna follow it well.
I kind of echo is the O-line really what it is type of sentiments has been when we're talking about that stuff. I don't know. At this point, I think we we let our eyes tell the story, and if you weren't there, well, then too bad, because we're not going to put it on video for you.
Yeah, right. Seriously.
But I just say, for now, let's just give it a little grain of salt. How about that? I think that's really that's realistic.
I will say I love the fact that, you know, everything I'm hearing from Ted Roof's defense is aggression, turnovers, and focuses on turnovers. Even Gus said it. You know, defenses are a lot more fun, whether they were George O'Leary defenses or Chins. You know, as much as you hated the stats, you got to remember how many snaps they were playing.
Yeah.
You know, but it's always more fun when you're in the mix for that turnover. And with our offense, you know, and what it could be, it's kind of like the Frost idea where you get the turnovers to put the ball in the offense's hands so that they can go and score. Now, assuming we've cleaned up the red zone with Miles Montgomery, we've got someone like Bowser now with Miles Montgomery that can lay the hit stick in short yardage situations and goal line situations. I feel much better about that in the red zone. So, you know, we want the turnovers. We want the forced fumbles. It's good to see Walker. Walker's better. Lee Hunter is in way better shape this preseason than he was last preseason. I have a feeling that man is gonna. I think he was kind of pissed off about how things went down last year in the Big 12 for the first year, and I think he's put in the work. He did mention, you know, you mentioned the trip to the hospital and all that. UCF is a master of marketing. Like, you know, the whole idea of having them color the helmet stickers and all that. And Lee Hunter mentioned during his interview, and he's a man of few words, but, you know, he mentioned his daughter and how his motivation to is his daughter and how much it touched him when he went to the hospital, because all he thought about was his daughter and how lucky, you know, we all are. And, you know, I'll echo that. I mean, Josh, you just had a trip to the ER to remind you of that. But
Arnold Palmer, I mean, literally was in the hospital yesterday because of something I knew exactly what was going to probably happen, and it was relatively easy. But at 5 a.m. on a Sunday, where else are you going to take your kid? So yeah, I've been there a few times, unfortunately. But you're right. I love that. And I don't know if it was completely publicized, but at the end of the half of football, the entire football team went to the corner where all the Arnold Palmer kids were, and families, and waved and chatted briefly because they were in the stands. And then they went to the locker room. So yeah, it is good to humanize these athletes that are really doing amazing things and have them also, you know, relate to the communities that they're in. It's always wonderful when that happens.
100%. All right. That's all we have for football now, but I have a feeling there'll be some more football news afoot soon. We didn't really get much as far as the kicking is concerned. We didn't get much clarity there. Both punters look pretty good. You know,
60-yarder was close.
Yeah.
Line drive, but it was close. I mean, it was closer than I expected.
Yeah. So no, he definitely had the leg, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people, if you weren't watching it, it was close enough for a lot of people to think that he actually made it. So he's got the leg. Colton Boomer, you know, I know he's still dealing with some injury stuff too now too. So I hope that gets clarified. And you know, Trace Trilko actually had a very candid interview with him where he was talking about some of the you know, some of the mental game that goes along with that stuff. And you know, I wish him the best and hope he does well and can get it back. I know Gus wants to give him that chance, but Riddick looks like he's a good option for kicker this year as well. All right, so let's go ahead and pivot. All right.
I don't know if I can
UCF basketball, not much to talk about, thankfully, because it seems to be not good news lately. Still no clarity on the Johnny Dawkins situation, which is interesting. UCF lands a transfer from a former 5-star prospect, Benny Williams. He spent the last 3 seasons at Syracuse, averaged 5 points per game. If you look at his stats versus what CJ Walker's are, they're very closely aligned as far as the type of player that they are and what they bring to the table. There is, some rumors that he didn't get along with some of the coaching staff at Syracuse. So I hope that cleans up, as he comes
dismissed from Syracuse. He wasn't just like a transfer guy.
Yeah, I was trying to be delicate.
Well, Ben just lays down
the hammer.
Hey man, we're recruiting we're getting some transfers in that have some interesting things going on with them. Hopefully we can kind of bring them together and get some positivity moving forward.
Yeah, listen, I don't think he caught a case or anything. He just had it's not like that level of issue.
No, it seemed to be just some on the court, like almost attitude type stuff.
But isn't that what Johnny Dawkins is possibly being known for? Jeez, I can't talk at this point. But he isn't like the reason Mike Williams is coming here because of some connections and rehab, if you will, of a PR perspective.
Well, Mikey Williams, the interesting thing is the one that he had connections with left to go coach at Mercer, right? So that's still a question.
He's not going to Mercer. I'm sorry.
No, I don't think he's going to Mercer. But the question is whether he sticks with UCF, right? And then you've got I can't remember
Ben left.
No, hold on. The center that is reclassifying. 5-star center that's reclassifying from 25 to 2024.
DME, his name's escaping me right now, but he went to DME. He's reclassifying it.
So hopefully we can hold on to him.
Right.
Oddly enough, Joey Hart, who left us, who broke our heart and went to Kentucky, is transferring again. So hopefully his family issues that he got out of his NLI were resolved, and he finds a new home. He may go to Arkansas, who knows, to follow Cal. He may end up at Syracuse, who knows. So I say that tongue in cheek because you know how I feel about the NLI situation, but supposedly it was family issues, and if he did move there for family issues, honestly, I hope it's resolved. If not, and he's still willing to transfer, then I'm just a little bit butthurt about that. So if you can't tell. So good luck to him no matter what happens. And we should start to see now that the floodgates are opening up a little bit, we should start to see a little bit more movement about who's available and who we can get in here. I know we've got a bunch of different conversations going with different players. We kind of have to. Nikola Musovic, I can't remember exactly how to say it. The player that came in late last year, he transferred as well. He was the one who had a grandparent that passed away in the middle of the season and went back home. He is transferred. So I believe we have 6 scholarship players right now. So we need all the help we can get with that. Not much else to say on basketball, so let's go ahead and pivot again.
Pivot. Kids asleep. If I can be a little louder.
All right, Ben just stopped saying pivot at this point. He just gives us a start. There we go. All right. So we don't have Trey and his hearty laugh. I don't know if you guys. I sent a short video clip to the guys in the text talk last week of him laughing at the end.
It was good. It was
really good, and I slowed it down to like 0.5, so it sounded like he was drunk. And it was even better if you do that. So one thing I'll give you guys a quick note. 1.25 speed for this podcast. We might go 2 hours. It goes a little bit faster, but it's a good speed for us and how fast we talk. So just putting that out there. And if you want to laugh a little bit, put us down to 5 because we all sound drunk. 0.5 or 0.75.
Yeah.
All right. So UCF Baseball is now ranked number 17. We didn't know where they were going to be after West Virginia. They were number 16 and then proceeded to go to West Virginia and lose several heartbreakers. We led them all and let West Virginia back in it. Obviously, they're a good team. I told you last week I'm worried about this, but I did expect us to take 2 out of 3.
It was there. The opportunity was there. I watched
here to win all 3 games. Our pitching and our defense was just not what it normally is. And defensively, it is a little bit different. West Virginia does have a turf field, so the balls definitely don't bounce or behave the same way on a turf field when you're fielding as they do. And there was also a strong wind pushing out of the ballpark that took some fly balls that normally would have been inside the park and probably caught that went out of the park. Had some good plays we saw. There was a bunt that was just like amazing. It popped off the bat and just kind of sat there, and they were waiting for it to roll foul, and it never did. It just literally just went plop, and then it didn't move. So there were some good things to take away. I mean, the guys were hitting fairly well. We had definitely missing Sundin for that extra pop. Had some roster changes throughout these games that showed some promise as well as far as hitting is concerned. I was not happy about the results, and I was not happy about the pitching. So hopefully we get back on the horse versus North Florida tomorrow. So anything else you guys wanted to talk about with regard to baseball?
I mean, all of them were heartbreaking losses. I mean, I think it's tough when you're up in the game. I don't know about Saturday's game. I was real busy with my own sports weekend with my kids this weekend, but I did rewatch Sunday's game after I got home, and it looked like we had it in the bag, and then they start to creep back into it. Then all of a sudden it's just like a big hit after big hit, kind of going back and forth, and then we lose it in the last inning. But and then of course we lost it just the bomb home run that kid hit to end that game. That walk-off was just a monster shot. And it makes me wonder, the last thing I want to say about the West Virginia series is like that road that is behind the left field fence. It seems like a relatively busy road. It's like that's a road that I don't really want to travel on when it's during a West Virginia baseball game, because there was I think UCF Baseball's Twitter put on Friday night that I think it was Ziska that hit a home run over that left field wall there, and it's like, did that land in the truck bed or what? Like driving by at the same time. But that's a really kind of interesting ballpark with the giant state of West Virginia icon in the outfield there.
It's a good looking ballpark, but
I'll tell you, in the bottom of that ninth, when it was like 10-8, I think third game, and you just, as soon as you get those walks, and I just knew, and I had that was it was.
And it's unfortunate. The other thing, not to get too negative about baseball, because obviously they have a chance to bounce right back, but it was tough, kind of losing that Stetson game in a similar fashion, and that's our first midweek loss, all season, and so that was also a little bit a tough pill to swallow. But we've got a little bit of a lighter week coming up, schedule-wise, so we'll see.
Well, the big thing to watch with our baseball team is we do a pretty good job. We stranded a lot of runners again this weekend. We do a pretty good job of forcing other teams to go through their rotations and their pens. And we didn't do that against West Virginia. Their pitchers were in there for 9,900, pitch counts. And we actually did more rotating pitchers, and that's a strength of ours, right? But everybody seemed to have an off weekend for whatever reason, whether it be cold weather, whatever. But, what we're looking for is for our hitters to make them rotate their pitchers, because most don't have the pitching depth that we have. And when they didn't have to do that, then that caused us not to have that advantage as we moved along. So
we did it Sunday, didn't we? Like we took the pitcher out first inning, and then all of a sudden it just kind of
but then we gave it up at the end. I mean, we were up a run, and
right, of course.
It was that seesaw, or not. It was like the same type of curve. Like what happened in the first with us is happening to us in the ninth-ish, right against us. So,
all right. So moving on from baseball, the good news is they're still ranked number 17 in the nation. So, hopefully we can bounce back against North Florida. We did have some feedback last week. Actually, 2 weeks in a row, we've been getting feedback where folks have been giving us feedback. So make sure you keep doing that. Also, make sure to like, subscribe, comment. Several of you took the opportunity to like for last week's show. Please keep those coming. That helps us and obviously tells us what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. So if never want to get a down thumb, but actually Ben just updated me. It looks like we did drop out of the rankings today. All right, so I take that back. Everything sucks.
Yes.
All right, everything sucks.
Let's see Central Michigan 4 times in a row.
So
we have
North
4-game
Florida
series this weekend. We got a doubleheader on Saturday with Central Michigan.
Well, I think that pretty much throws us out of contention for hosting, but what it does, we are still definitely in the contention to play in the tournament. So we'll just probably be at FSU or something like that.
Well,
so,
I mean, maybe it depends on how the Big 12 championship goes too. I'd say, and other things. I don't think it's completely out of reach, but it would have been easier if we picked up one at least.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So since Alan decided not to join us because he's still hungover from his trip to New York, we are going to move right on to Josh's sometimes funny fact of the week. Josh, take it away.
Hey, how you doing, everyone? This is Josh, and here's my funny fact of the week. So the Sun Devils, we know, have a mascot named Sparky. So
yeah, we learned that today.
We learned that today. That's not even a fact.
That's not even a fact. That's part of the fact. I gotta get out of that. I can't.
Yeah, you don't have a radio voice, dude.
I'm using my fake radio voice. That's the problem.
Your fake radio voice is what I meant.
Yeah,
your radio voice.
I need to do that in the vocal fry. Yeah.
All right, come on.
Yeah. So we know that the Sun Devils mascot is named Sparky. What company was the illustrator from that designed Sparky?
What?
An illustrator from what company designed the Sun Devil mascot Sparky?
I don't think it's Disney, so I'm going to say LucasArts or maybe Pixar. Well, no, Pixar wasn't around long enough for that. So I'm assuming Sparky's been around for a while. So I don't know. Are you talking about illustrator meaning a person or a company?
The illustrator itself was from what company?
Okay. I'm just going to say Disney because there's not very many or Marvel, one of the two. I don't know.
Yeah,
there you
go. I'm trying to think of a like Arizona-based company that would maybe do something like that, but I have no idea. So I'm just gonna go on a little bit of the track that Roger was and say like DC Comics.
Well, it was pretty obvious because we are a sports podcast based out of Orlando. Yes, Disney is the answer. Disney illustrator Bert Anthony created the Sun Devil. And also, I don't know if it's Bert Anthony specifically, but also I believe created, Disney illustrators have created the Oregon Duck or the Stanford Indian, which is no longer used anymore. They're now a tree. Although I love the Stanford tree. I don't know about you, but I love that tree costume and all that fun stuff that comes with the Stanford tree. But yeah, it was a Disney illustrator, Bert Anthony, pretty well known one too.
All right, thanks, Bert. We appreciate your contribution to college football. I definitely believe the duck thing. And no, it wasn't that obvious just because we're out of Orlando. That's such a random, not funny, random. Well, I guess it's funny. I don't know. It's just weird. So
it's funny to think that so the Sparky was created in 46, which George Lucas definitely was in the middle of the Star Wars universe during 46. Maybe if it was Stan Lee created it, I get you. But
well, that's where I was going there. That's why I asked if it was a name or if it was a company, right? So
I let you go down the path. It was fine.
Yeah, I was close. I was close. All right.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
All right. So moving on, since Alan completely renamed this segment last week, he did not include the track. It has now been christened the quick update on other UCF sports that Alan does not watch. So
I love this.
Let's go ahead and go with that.
Okay, so sorry, I have to laugh at it because the first thing I do is UCF's women tennis. And the good part about the women's tennis team is they started to get some momentum. They beat Iowa State 4-0. They beat Kansas 4-3 to close out the regular season. And they were not winning matches. Couple months back. So Big 12 tournament is next for them. Another sport that Alan does not watch is UCF men's tennis. And this was a heartbreaker. He doesn't watch enough that he didn't put on the show notes that they lost to number 2 TCU. Now, number 2 TCU and UCF were tied 3-3. We were right at the last match and lost 4-3. Yeah.
And we didn't have our number 1 player.
That's true.
He was out.
Yeah, so our men's tennis team is, I think, 18-4 now. They're
really good.
Well.
They're really good.
Yeah,
and they're getting ready to go to the Big 12 tourney, which the first round is hosted at
Lake Nona.
Yes, the UTSA Center, home of the UCF tennis program. So go check it out if you can.
Yeah, I actually might be there sometime soon for some pickleball. That's potentially, it's a huge area for pickleball. We'll get to that.
I get it. Pickleball's kind of taken off, but it's still pickleball. So
listen, I mean, I've seen 7-year-olds beat the crap out of 18-year-olds in pickleball. You can't do that in almost any other sport.
We're a clean show. What are you doing?
We're E for everyone.
That's right. All right. UCF softball. Come on. Good news.
So another sport Alan doesn't watch is UCF softball. UCF softball beat Jacksonville 9-1, swept Houston 3-0. We're picking up some momentum. We're playing FAU next.
Yeah, another big sweep for UCF softball. They're peaking at the right time. Our hittings finally came on. Although Jada Cody, not quite what we're used to from her in her senior season. But the rest of the team is playing really, really well. Aubrey Evans is doing well, and we have some momentum going into the tournament, and I expect that we will do well. So that wraps up the show for us this week, and this is my radio voice, Josh.
That's actually pretty decent. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. I had lots of practice on Nightline, but no, we just used our regular voices. But thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed our previews. I'm still trying to get the other 2 podcasts for the previews. So we're trying to get the Utah folks next, and then potentially Colorado. Maybe I'll get Dion on since he loves media. But other than that, have a great week, folks. Looking forward to next week. Go Knights and
charge
on.
All right,
now,
that was super exciting.
The duck was when we were using StreamYard, and no one talked about the duck until we stopped the podcast.